Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's BAInsights session. And today we'll be talking about business analysis in remote or hybrid working. I'm pleased that I've got loads of good guests to talk with me about that topic. So, without further ado, if I can ask each of them to introduce themselves, starting with Jamie, please.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jamie Champagne. I am an overly passionate business analysis professional that loves helping humans collaborate with technology. Yes, actually know how to use it, how to have fun with it, how to get the most out of any investment in it. And so when I'm not collaborating and coaching, speaking, training, all that fun stuff, you can find me on a surfboard out here in Hawaii. Hello,
Perfect.
everyone.
A little bit of jealousy creeping in there about the surfing bit there, Jamie, but thank you very much. Okay, Claire, over to you, please.
Hello, I'm Claire. I'm a business analysis manager in the EPMO team at Optimizely, which is a digital marketing company. We're based here in London, so I don't have any sunshine like you, Jamie. It is currently raining. So I'm building out a new team of business analysts, bit of a mix bunch at the moment, but we're trying to build out the capability and the team within Optimizely and show the value of business analysis across the business. I've worked as part of an IT team, outside of an IT team. I've worked in travel and publishing and now digital marketing. So I've got a few different experiences to draw from, but there's definitely some common threads here.
Perfect. That'll be great. We'll look forward to those threads, Claire. And Ainul, over to you.
Hello. Been in financial services for over 20 years. Business change for about 10. Was in the contracting industry for quite some time and then moved into permanent. Now currently working in SME as an asset within a large asset management firm within the City of London. So again, no sunshine. But there is lots of change happening across the industry at the moment, which keeps me busy. And I tend to I found my gap as an SME stroke business change, bridging that gap between what the business wants and being able to articulate, challenge, and reinforce with the various IT teams, change teams, and product teams, and so on and so forth. So I found a niche in that space which has worked really well for me over the years.
That's perfect, thank you, Ainul. And last but not least, Stuart.
Hi, I'm Stuart Tucker. I'm currently a product manager at Rightful, which is part of Digital Science, which is a technology company. I've done a number of roles in publishing and local government. Been a business analyst in both of those fields, also been a product manager and a project manager within those fields too. Mixed experience of working remote and hybrid working with offshore clients as well. No surfing here, but like Claire, enough rain probably to surf on by the end of the day, I reckon. So yeah, great to be here.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, definitely rain seems to be a bit of a theme, apart from Jamie, possibly. But let's start with the ball rolling in terms of what you might consider to be the biggest challenges or opportunities that are associated to either hybrid or remote working for your teams. And Jamie, if we can start with you first on that question, please.
I'm all about the opportunities when we talk about either hybrid or remote. I mean, look, today we have people from all over, all on one call, and how easy it is to do it with a few clicks, so that seeing that it's possible to engage and reach audiences, reach teams, pull your subject matter experts from wherever they may be at. I love that. I've always been a big fan of work when you're productive and don't work when you're not productive. Not just when, but now how about where, that this really supports that on it. But, it's so hard to have a wonderful meeting and dialogue if they sound like this all the time. It's going to be really, really hard. And say the human side of us gets frustrated, or it's a black screen because the internet connectivity, I can't show video. So there's those inherent challenges, but it's the same thing we've done with trying to get a conference room at an office building at lunchtime. That was always frustrating to try to find space for everybody. So I think those same opportunities and challenges, it's that it might feel different because we're using a different tool, but those same opportunities and challenges are there. But to me, again, I still feel even more growth and opportunity on your reach.
Yeah. And a brilliant start there, Jamie. It makes me think as well that in the way that you might prepare your room or prepare to meet people in person, certainly no excuse to not doing that when you're speaking to people remotely as well. Just figuring out your own environment and getting ready with your questions or your notepad, as it were.
Mhm.
So excellent. Claire, I'd be interested to hear your perspective on that as well, be it challenges, opportunities, or both.
I think I agree with all of the points Jamie has just made. I feel like a nodding dog already. But I think also, just to follow on to your point, John, it is about more. So it's making more effort, putting a bit more thought and consideration, into the planning and the time that you spend on things. Maybe more documentation to make sure people have visibility of things. And I think we all agree there probably are more meetings. But I think that's more just because you have to maybe schedule time in someone's diary rather than just going past their desk. So I think there's more of some of these kind of things, but also there's this balance that we're trying to obtain. So a lot of the points that I thought of in advance of this call was I could see them both as pro and a con. So it's just about how to maintain that balance between, giving enough communication that everybody is up to date on everything, but not doing too much that they feel overwhelmed by the volume of emails or messages. And I think when I speak to my team, a lot of the challenges come from that lack of personal interaction. So it's building those relationships, which obviously is quite important as a BA, just general team bonding, the kind of the banter that you get if you're in the office with other people in real time. You kind of lose a lot of that stuff, and you lose a lot of that tacit knowledge, things that you would have just picked up through osmosis if you were in the office. So there's kind of challenges in that respect, and in terms of just getting this balance and figuring out navigating your way through all the hundreds of emails that probably get generated now.
That's it. Yeah, but there's definitely some interesting points. Maybe we talk about the emails as well, which might be somewhat of a drawback, but maybe I've certainly been in environments where the whole team have been working in person and emailing each other. So I think there's lessons to be learned, irrespective of where you are and in relation to email behaviour. But Anil, that'd be good to hear your view. And you're on mute. Sorry.
Thank you. Maybe I should be controversial and say we should all come into the office. The reality is our working environment is now flexible. Irrespective of flexibility, be it remote, hybrid, there's two parts I think are critical. One is knowing what you need to do and getting it done. It is a critical part of this flexibility, but without losing the fact that networking, that interaction, that human element of things is absolutely critical for anybody who wants a career as a business analyst. I think I've met many business analysts. I can't name them, but there was one that I worked for a year, but only met them once. And we had to say to them, well, if you want a career here, you've got to actually start meeting the team once in a while, and not just be over the phone. So for me, it's a responsibility that we take, that we have an opportunity for, but that opportunity helps us drive to get the answers. But there's nothing beating that element of being able to come in and say hello, have a cup of coffee, and even the simplest things are just asking people, let's grab a coffee, let's have a chat. It is priceless, and I don't think you can ever get rid of that. And as a result, I work in a complete flexible hybrid scenario. There have been weeks I haven't gone in, and there'll be week like next week where I've got so many back-to-back meetings that I have to present or promote something at that I'm end up going at 5 days. But it's that flexibility that gives me the ability to actually gives anybody the ability to not only get their work done, but actually to make an impact in the places that they're working.
Yeah, makes sense. I mean, and having that awareness and all, as you sort of said about the situation you're in and the team are in as well. I mean, that seems ultimately key in what you're saying there in terms of understanding how you need to interact with people, recognizing that you're not going to necessarily get that opportunity at the coffee machine every day to hear what the team need from you or stakeholders need from you. So maybe it's about not being afraid to drop people a note from time to time and just say hello on Teams or Skype, as we might do if we were walking past their desk. So there's some interesting points that make me think, and I'm sure might make others think there as well. And Stuart, I'll let you conclude that question if we may. We haven't
Yeah,
taken all the
sure.
answers.
Yeah, I'm going to say I don't want to repeat too much, but I think the communication is obviously the big one, especially as a BA. It's like I'm a big believer in building relationships, getting to know people, understanding their role, understanding their personality, and being able to adapt, which is a little bit harder in the remote world. But I think more generally, you want people, whoever they are and whatever their role, to be happy in the work they're doing, and generally happy people, happy workers or good workers. And I think having the flexibility with remote and hybrid working for those that do enjoy it is a real positive. I think it's really great, as Jamie mentioned, that you can meet people from whereas you used to work with people who kind of lived in your vicinity, in your area. Now you can work with people all over the world, potentially, like we are now. But you also have to adapt to that. So time differences can be a challenge. You know, if somebody's 2 or 3 hours ahead, maybe you don't schedule a meeting for 4 o'clock when it's going to be 7 o'clock for those. But those are quite simple things that I do think make a big difference if you get them wrong. So it's just about being aware and trying to be fair and just trying to be considerate to all people in the same way you'd hope they'd be considerate to you.
Yeah, we agree. And we'll definitely talk about relationships in a minute. But I think there's that point around consideration is really key, Stuart. I'm glad you made it because, whilst we might typically recognise that someone is in a different location, and maybe they're the person that are inconvenienced sometimes by the meetings that we put in. I think it's only fair that we inconvenience ourselves if we need to speak to them at a time that's more convenient to them as well. So I think that point you made, I think, is really well made. As was, of course, the relationships, and that sort of takes me on to a question in terms of, and I'll ask this to you first, Claire, in terms of how you maintain the relationships, whether it's with your teammates or with your stakeholders or even with clients, if that's a relationship you maintain.
Yeah, I think most BAs are quite naturally good at stakeholder management, and building strong relationships with people, even if they don't realise that that's what they're doing. So for me, it's more about levelling up now, so making that more effort to connect with people. And I think where you would do your stakeholder mapping previously, you kind of just need to now factor in location settings, and that might sort of steer the determination of how to engage with people. So I try and think about 3 things: connection, communication, and clarity. So the connection is, getting that connection built with somebody informally, getting to know them on a personal level, and just having that small talk that, as you said, you would have had at the coffee machine previously, and which now almost doesn't exist in some instances and at some meetings. We used to call this heads together time when we were in the office. So making the most of those connections that you get in real time to then maximize them when you're not face to face with somebody. The communication, as I think I've said, is just about putting more effort in. So do you need to have more regular, more frequent syncs with people? Do you need to have, we call it a green door policy. So if my light is green on Teams, then you can just call me up. You don't need to schedule time specifically. And thinking about different channels and mechanisms of communicating with people. And then clarity, as they finding out how people prefer to be engaged. Do they prefer Teams or an email, or would they rather that you just pick the phone up? And being really transparent and honest, setting a really clear agenda for meetings, making sure you focus on those outcomes. And I think just taking a minute always to clarify people's understanding before you move on, just making sure that everybody's on the same page, because it's really easy to leave somebody behind virtually, I think.
That's it. Yeah, we agree. Ainul.
Very important point. Prefer to be engaged with everybody and be engaged. For me, the strongest relation building element for me has been listening and giving people the space to speak. And sometimes you have to, I think the remote working does help with this. It pulls people away from their natural environment to be able to give a fair, open, honest view of things, where you may not have got it in an office, and even pulling them to a side in an office or in a room, their eyes are still looking over them and saying, why are you talking to that person and why are you talking to this person? So the ability for me to build relationships is just listen and really engage of what they are trying to say. I've seen so many people pull people in certain direction because that's what management wanted to do. and sometimes it's not always the right way to build relationship when you're dictating where you want them to go to, especially in a change environment. So for me, it's the listening part, which is absolutely critical. And then for the other, and the general, I think all elements for everybody, it's just making sure you can articulate a delivery that works for them in a time frame that works for them, knowing that they are challenges. There's always going to be constraints, financial, people, and so on and so forth. But having that open dialogue about where you are, how you're going, helps build that trust. And I found that trust has got me a long way. Being open, honest, listen, and trust. It's just a gift sent if you're trying to make headways into this area.
Yeah, and all those things you said there, they're perfectly applicable in any form, whether you're dealing remotely or in person with somebody. I think that point around listening, though, is whilst it's one that maybe all of us might think is somewhat obvious. I think from a hybrid or remote perspective, I feel like it's even more important, like in terms of giving yourself not just the time to listen, but the environment to listen as well. It's no good being in that noisy coffee shop, theoretically working remotely, or at home where the kids are running around, if actually it's preventing you listening to the person you're supposed to be talking to as well. So yeah.
Can I add to that quickly? Because I think
Certainly.
I've noticed everybody on the call doing it. I think it's active listening, which is the key for me. So I know we've all got our cameras on, which obviously is a big bonus. You actually can see on people's face that they're listening. But it's that kind of acknowledgement as you go, the nodding along, and just letting people know that you are following them. It's really difficult. But I think if you can show that you're listening, people respond to that really well as well.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah, I'm doing it by habit there. It's not deliberate there, Claire, even though it backs it up nicely. Stuart, what would be your perspective?
Yeah, I think Claire covered quite a lot of the points I probably would have said, to be honest. I think I think you've got to be proactive. I think when we're all working in an office together, it's a lot easier to have, often you have a meeting and then you might speak to somebody after the meeting on the way back to your desk or in another environment about something work related. Obviously, you don't get that in quite the same way remotely or in hybrid. So I think it's about being proactive. I think it's really important to clarify that things have been understood, or to communicate and make sure you're on the same page, to make sure two people don't go away from the meeting kind of normal rules really, with two slightly different understandings, and they both think they understand, but actually they don't. So just kind of grouping people in together and just confirming the understanding based on your understanding can be a way to avoid those problems, because I think it can be a bit more costly in the remote world. People can go off on their own a bit more. There's not those natural touch points to check in with them. So you need to be a bit more proactive than you would be in a kind of office environment. But yeah, relationships are obviously key as a BA, and you're only as good as those relationships. You need to trust people and build that trust with them, but they also need to trust you. So it's important that you take the time to explain what you're doing, why, and I think context is also really important. Often you might be aware of something that somebody else isn't, and you can give them that little bit of context to help them realize why you're asking the questions you're asking, and give them the chance to come back and clarify.
Yeah, I think so. I think demonstrating those behaviours, Stuart, it feels like it will just reinforce what you're saying. More we demonstrate those behaviours, it will reinforce perhaps, like, for example, if I speak to Claire and she realises the information I've gathered from her, taking it into account, and I've shared it with others, that that's a similar behaviour that's going to happen as well. So I think just reinforcing perhaps the good behaviour that you mentioned is key. So thank you for that, Stuart. And Jamie, apologies for making you go last on this question this time around.
No, this is great. I'm being a business analyst and overanalyzing how much we're like describing the soft skills, the skill sets, those things that you need to have in your toolbox that make you a successful business analysis professional, no matter where you work. And the only thing I figured I could add is just really focusing on that facilitating element, that you're collaborating with each other, you're collaborating with the work. And I think it's, don't get caught up on trying to like bark orders, like I'm online, let's hurry up, everyone like add their task, or hurry up and give feedback or vote, like pushing the activity or the desired behavior you want of everyone versus trying to get them to pull into, the topic and each other. I think, when you can engage and get people talking across the board And so they're not working for you or talking to you, they're talking to each other. That kind of skill set in there, that's what really leverages everything everyone already said here. You bring them all together and you play that true facilitator role to help them, the team, achieve their objectives. That if you don't own it yourself, that it's not like my job is to make this meeting happen. That's normally not your job description. Your job is to enable the delivery of value. How you do it, that's the art and the science.
That's it. Yeah, and I mean, certainly similar points than that I was thinking of as well. I mean, I think on top of that, like probably being proactive, as proactive as you can be, I think is really important. I think whether that's just reaching out to someone to say hello, if you've not heard from someone in the team for a while, making sure they're okay, picking the phone up occasionally as well, or just taking the time perhaps to just bring different stakeholders together. They don't have to be members of your team. It could just be, if we know that 3 of our stakeholders are working remotely, why not have a group conversation about a related topic if we can, rather than have 3 separate one-on-ones as well. That would be my advice. So it feels like we touched on a few sort of like more the personal side of the situation, building up relationships there. I wonder, is there any particular perhaps strategies or tactics you might have implemented to foster collaboration and teamwork in a remote or hybrid environment with your teams? And I know I'm going to give you a chance to open us up on that one. Good.
For me, it's I work in an environment where I have outsourced providers out in India, and I have business people sitting in the US, and we're sitting in the UK, which can be very challenging. Majority of the times, as each of those component parts evolve in their business and have new people coming in, and especially within the BAs that the business analysts that we hire or we get in, and sometimes even sitting across from those 3 environments. One of the biggest way to foster collaboration is giving them time to giving them up to speed. A lot of people who come into businesses don't really have the context of why they're there, and that takes a very long time to develop. What I've realized from my perspective is if I give people the context, they very quickly understand where the value add they are, what value add they're providing. We've had that discussion before we've hired them. We've had the discussion about where we want them. So for me, the biggest element of fostering collaboration is giving people context and understanding of why, what, when, before they got to where they've got to. And that for me has expedited their value add in a very, very quick time. And knowing, I reach out to random BAs and say, look, you've just joined the team, you're doing a random piece of work in this business area. Here's my name, let's have a half an hour, let's have a catch up. And if you've got any questions on the business and you just need someone impartial to ask you a question, come. So for me, the collaboration is really just giving people context and letting them really, and they're all highly qualified professionals or people with in understanding of their role. So give them the context and I see them fly.
Yeah, absolutely. And I like the point as well now about, just encouraging people to reach out to each other and say hello as well. That certainly would help. Brilliant. Stuart.
Yeah, I think that why is really important. I think it doesn't just help you do a good job as a business analyst, but it also helps the people just to do good work. If they've got the context on why you're doing a piece of work and why you're asking some questions, they might actually come back with some better questions that can be answered and can actually develop the work on. I think for me, it's just all the time about trying to just treat people as people. I think I mentioned before about messaging people and just giving them that why, but also checking in. How are you doing? How was your weekend? If everything you send them is a request for work, then you're going to become possibly quite unpopular quite quickly, or just they're likely to leave you on red rather than answering your question. So I think it's important to get to know people. I think trying to set boundaries as well. I like what Claire said before about the green room, so that at least there people know. I think I've had people before who've messaged me out of hours or out of perceived hours, because for them, maybe that's how they're working, that's how they're flexible. And I always try and make it really clear to them that even if I message them out of hours, which is pretty rare because I don't really like doing that to begin with, I never expect anything to come back out of hours. So if I ask a question at 5 to 5, tomorrow is basically when I expect at the earliest to have an answer. And I think those boundaries are really important, because I think it's obviously bad for the team and bad for collaboration if people are overworked, stressed, or feel like they have to respond to the same standards as everybody else. Other than that, I think getting regular meetings in the diary is a good one for the team, which you can always, as always, cancel if you don't need them. I think the reason that's important is if you don't have that, sometimes you lose the chance to collaborate, because then you're trying to get something in the diary and one person can make it. You need to think ahead a little bit. So I think having those regular meetings that you can cancel if you don't need are always a touch point. And if nothing else, it allows you to come together and check in with each other, see how you're doing.
And I like that point, Stuart, around not always just reaching out to people from work-related perspective, because it makes me think actually sometimes where I find that people I maybe haven't spoken to all day, I'm sort of reaching out to them maybe at 4 o'clock, and I feel like I'm going, "Hello, how are you?" But actually, I'm just only contacting you because I need something, which is a bit of a slap on the wrist to say you probably should have contacted them about 4 or 5 hours ago to say hello, and then ask them now. So. Yeah, I'm sure that's a point that resonates with others as well, Stuart. Jamie, what will be your perspective?
Well, the thing I would say is always ask, why are we meeting? We do this for both in person, but especially then hybrid, virtual, any kind of combination. Why meeting? Even ask, why not an email? Why not a chat? That we have all these technologies at our disposals. Why do we need to meet? And so being real clear up front on that, I'm a big fan of desired outcomes for any kind of engagement. That's your definition of done. You don't have to stay in a meeting for 60 minutes just because you scheduled it for 60 minutes. If you finish what you came to achieve, thank everyone. And, I'd love to use that time for something else. There's always something to work on. That being clear, just we're going to get together to achieve this goal. Once we have that, and we, again, that verbiage, we, not you or not me, it's like you say, we need to achieve something. That's why you collaborate and work with more than one person typically. Otherwise, like, yeah, John, if you need something, hi, John, here's my email. Send it over as soon as you get a chance. Let me know if you can't make tomorrow. That's it.
That's it.
You don't have to have a whole meeting necessarily. So I think just asking, why are we meeting or why not meeting? And just being real focused on what you hope to achieve. And I think, again, that just ties into everyone else's comments about that clarity, be that awareness of what they're coming into, what they're expected, all those things that help. But I'm a big fan. All my meeting invites have a desired outcome on them. This is what we're going to achieve by meeting.
Yeah, and doing that is really, it's useful, very, very useful for the recipient as well, because there are times, of course, where yours isn't the only meeting that exists. I mean, it may be at the time you book it. Hopefully, it is at the time you book it, and you're not, trying to take time they've already reserved. But there may be meetings that come along later that you're not aware of, and giving someone the ability to look at both meetings that appear at the same time. Why am I being invited to each? And having that view of that objective and what you intend to get out of it might mean that they can defer or refer or assign to somebody else in that situation. So I really like that point, Jamie. Claire, I want to know your view.
I think we've touched on it already, but it's really easy, I think, with remote or hybrid working for people to go off in different directions and be less visible. You can't see people physically in the office. You can't see what they're doing. And so for us, it's always about two sides of things, is getting people engaged personally. So we've touched on, again, a lot of the ways that you can just interact with people, have a team chat going, encourage the use of GIFs in that chat, and that kind of banter building. But from a work perspective, we've also tried to put in place these forums where people can connect on a professional level. So we have a BA community that we run here, which invites anybody in an analyst type role. So it doesn't have to be that you're a business analyst. You could be a business systems analyst, or you could be a data analyst or something. But we have a lot of siloed teams who look after specific tools or specific areas of the business. And that's a great way for us to connect across those teams, talk, peer to peer about just general, analyst things, who's using Lucidchart this week for their process maps and things like that. But also it does really foster that collaboration. When we talk about the different things that we're working on, it usually sparks an interest in somebody else because the systems all connect to each other. And so the chances are that something that somebody's doing on this side of the building impacts something that somebody else is doing at home. So, you know, just bringing people together in that forum just really raises awareness and builds that collaboration on both of those levels, the personal and the professional.
Yeah, I agree. It makes me think conveniently we had our monthly BA community catch up today at Capco. So it's already fresh in my mind for that reason. It's good opportunity for anyone, irrespective of where they are, you know, to come together and just share a view of what's been happening across the team, what individuals are, you know, been happening perhaps in their personal life as well, introduce new people to the team. So I think that's one thing that you made me think of there, Claire, as we was talking. But also, I think another strategy that certainly I bring into play, or tactic, if you want to call it, is recognising that there will be times, hopefully, where the team don't have to work remotely. You know, there are times where, you know, maybe you are located in an area where it is possible to come to a single location once a week, or to come to the office once a week. And I think if there is that opportunity, then if you've been working remotely for the other 4 days a week, as an example, it makes sense to try and synchronize as a team and all come in together on the same day. You know, there's nothing worse than finding out that you come in, you make the trip in one day, and it's the day that no one else is around. So if you make the effort, let the team know in plenty of time, maybe we're coming in next Tuesday, and then maybe that gives opportunity as well for a coffee or something more sociable after work, so that you again that get to know someone a bit more than you would just over a work environment as well. Perfect. Okay, so in terms of like that, extending that collaboration and that view, are there any tools or techniques that you tend to use? And Stuart, I'd be interested in your view first on that one, please. And sorry, you're on mute there, Stuart.
Yeah, clearly.
I don't know if that's all part of the plan as we're talking about tools.
Well, sometimes you're only as good as the person operating the tools, aren't you? Sadly, very true in my case. I think in terms of tools and technologies that you can use, I think the first thing to say is, like many areas, these tools have developed significantly over the last 5 to 10 years, as you might expect with the pandemic. That's really accelerated changes for collaboration. I think the other more overarching thing I'd say is that you need to be adaptable to the company you're working in. And you may have a favorite tool, and we may express some favorite tools of ours, but if the company you're working at doesn't use those tools, don't carry on just because you like the tool when other people aren't engaging with it. So that's one thing I'd say to begin with. I think you've got the common things that when you want collaboration, you've got good options now with things like Google Docs and Word Docs to do track changes. Just be a little bit wary that if other people aren't engaging with what you're doing on there, then you're not actually getting them to the work to collaborate. So I think it's important you remember to do the hard yards of making sure people are engaged, they communicate. I think in days gone by, used to do a workshop in the office with Post-it notes that was always really good for engaging people, but often involved taking a low resolution picture on your phone afterwards, sharing it around, and that kind of being the end. You would write it up maybe and share it around in an email, but that was the end of the process. I think the great thing now, using something like Miro or Lucid Spark or other whiteboard technology, is one that you can develop, so you can have a workshop, kind of refine that, and then go on to another workshop later on, possibly even months later, but you can really iterate and keep improving. You can have multiple workshops on the same theme with multiple people and all have it in one place, and then you can share that with people who weren't in the workshop so they can see the output. And a nice benefit, certainly from a business analyst point of view, is people can kind of do the work for you a little bit in those sessions. When you're documenting requirements, you can get them to put the post-it notes on, write the content. They get more engaged then, rather than you always being the one writing it. And it does save a lot of work afterwards, physically writing it up again. It would be remiss of me not to mention as well, clearly areas like ChatGPT would really encourage people to explore the capabilities for them, but definitely tailor it to, it's important to respect obviously privacy and company sensitive information, and also make sure you're using tools that are relevant for the company you're working at.
It makes me think, Stuart, that when you're working remotely or hybrid, maybe it's the end of that message that gets put on the whiteboard. Do not wipe out, because you're gonna need it in a few hours' time.
Do not remove my Miro license. Yeah. Definitely.
Jamie, what would be your perspective on tools and technologies?
The tools and technologies out there are prolific, especially if you're throwing in AI apps and more, that, you know, find the right tool for the right needs. So if you want them collaborating, I'm totally a big fan with Stuart, and get your stakeholders, the team, They get more engaged the more they do. So I'm a big fan, have them do it. Yes, I use AI tools to do the note taking, so I don't have to take notes, and it sends automatic summaries that I can be present and engaged on that. That the piece on there is, do you have collaborative space? The tools and techniques, whatever the collaborative space is. And I think even that, again, the approach, pick what's easiest for them, not what you like. I love Lucid Chart. I love Claire already said that. I live in models on there. My stakeholders don't. They like sticky notes. Okay, we'll give them sticky notes. But the other piece too, again, there's so much technologies, and like I have more resources like on LinkedIn, to share on all the tech we can use. Don't forget the human side element of it. I love asking questions like, what's the most random object within arm's reach? To start building in that piece of like, what do you have at, your fingertips at disposal? Have people physically write pictures and show it to the screen. You have 5 senses in a virtual space, a hybrid space. Don't forget all 5 senses. That can really build some team building and collaboration engagement that you may not have just trying to go through an agenda list. So think about what is around you. Does everyone have a beverage? Do you let people know that it's okay to drink and eat in the meeting? We say that in a conference room, no food, no beverage, please. But on the meeting, like, do you tell people, please have a beverage handy? We're going to be talking a lot. Just mute yourself when you're crunching the hot chips too loud, please, so at least share with everyone else, like I ask, how many people cannot reach their cell phone right now, their smartphone? Is there any smart device not in arm's reach? And just to highlight what's there, but, get people to realize they have 5 senses and pull that right in, and always align the technology, the tool, whatever activity to that goal. Make it easy for them to achieve their goal. And that can really help you, because there is an overload of tech out there for now.
Excellent. Thank you, Jamie. Claire?
I think, as we've said, there's so many tools out there, and there's usually, good 3, 4, if not more, for every single thing that you might want to do. So, working from home during COVID, I tried to emulate a whiteboard in my front room, because I was used to writing on a whiteboard. That was how I sort of process things. And it's that adaptability that Stuart mentioned, moving along with the tools and making the best choices possible. I think it is really important to agree what those tools are, as a business or as a project team, because as a BA, you might be working on multiple projects, multiple work streams, and you don't want to have to change what technology you're using depending on which project it is. So, can you agree a consistent tool that you use for process mapping? For example, we try and use Lucid Chart consistently. As much as I love Miro or Miro, that's my default, because that's the one I started using during COVID. So I think it's agreeing those tools and making sure that those, as Jamie said, those are the tools that your stakeholders can engage in, because otherwise you're going to lose them really easily if you just focus on the tools that you prefer. We've also tried to keep pace with things like AI, which I think Stuart mentioned. So as a BA, one of the really cool things I think is something like Copilot, where I can record my call, my meeting, and I can really engage in the conversation without having to worry about taking too many notes, because I can get Copilot to summarize that afterwards for me. And then things as well like loop components. So whichever meeting I'm in, I can create a loop component, assign tasks to myself or to other people, and they always end up in that person's planner somewhere. So again, regardless of where those things are coming from, they're all funneled into one place for that person to then work from. Just agreeing things like that with people, that's the way that we're going to work, so that we can be consistent but also be as effective as possible, is really key, I think.
So that organisation, Claire, it can really help people, that are working in different areas or accessing files at different times. Just make sure that they can find it, rather than spend most of their time collaborating with you to try and find the artifact that they're updating.
It really slows you down if you have to think, oh, hang on a second, is this project documentation in Teams, or is it in Confluence, or it just really slows people down. And I think we forget there's this shorthand that once you know where something is, you just automatically click through and find it. So I think agreeing those things is very important.
Absolutely. Ainul, be your view on tools and technologies.
My first go-to has always been tools to help me. I'm dyslexic in nature, so I've had to pull on all those resources and tools that are available just to make my outputs meaningful. I'll start with something a little bit controversial. We can't have ChatGPT. It's all been locked down. Any sub-program that links to ChatGPT, we're not allowed to have. That's all been locked down. Grammarly, for example, and other tools. So we've been given default Copilot. And I think it's changed attitudes a bit. I get now BAs who would send me a message saying, this is the summary from Copilot. Can you check it, please? Now, yeah, can you check it? Because that was your job to write the notes. You've used the tool. Don't just output what the tool has given you and send it on to say you've done your job. Your job was a little bit more than that. So the cultural shift is still, and the boundaries of what is expected is still being established with the new technologies that we have. So for me, sometimes the technology makes people lazy. In that example, they could have just checked everything and made sure that they were what they expected or what they would have written down, or check back to the recording. And I know because I've been concentrating on the call, check back through the recording to validate if what they've written has been done. A lot of these technologies, AI technologies, counting the number of R's in strawberries or blueberries and so on and so forth, it just can't do. It's a wonderful article about how many R's in strawberries and an AI getting it wrong all the time. So something to read in the background. So we have to understand that the technologies isn't the be and end all, and is there to help us, not to replace our jobs in the way we do things. And we've got to be cognizant of where their boundaries are and where my responsibility starts and where my responsibility starts and ends, and what technology I help to do my responsibility, not to mitigate my responsibility. And that's what I think is quite an important point. But there is so much, like everybody said, there's so much out there. Have a bit of guts, have a bit of play around. And the whole point of knowing what the people that you engage with, your client, for example, or the different teams that you engage with, knowing how they perceive things is critical. Number of times you tell people, "Come zoom in." I know I'm trying, I can't see it. It is amazing. Just zoom in. I just want to see a little bit. Always be cognizant that the technology has limitations, and you need to perceive it from the other person's perspective. And get that technology working for you. So sometimes I would always recommend the people that I'm working with, go back through that call and just reflect on how it looked when you were presenting there. There were certain things that you would admit shouldn't have done it that way. So, so many technologies, use it of value, but your responsibility, it doesn't diminish your responsibility.
Yeah, I would agree. And I think in terms of tools and technologies as well, I think rather than me repeat what you've all said, I think something that I find useful, particularly going back to the point Stuart did make, though, in terms of sometimes your choice of tools is limited by the environment that you're in. I think I tend to think first about what capabilities is it that I'm needing for a particular engagement or project. So, for example, if I need the capability to map a process, what if I need the capability to collaborate or to share content with my stakeholders? That's my starting point. And then I can understand, well, actually, do we have a capability in tools to be able to do that? Is it Mural? Is it Miro? Is it something else? Or do I have to rely on capturing it in video and posting a picture somewhere? So I think for me, thinking about that capability helps identify the tools that are available to me, but also helps me understand why I'm going to approach using the tool or technology in the first place as well. So I think that's probably all I can add to the excellent points you've all made as well. So I wonder, like Jamie, if in terms of advice to new business analysts starting their careers, if those BAs are predominantly in environments where they are remote, maybe entirely, or at least predominantly, are there any particular advice you might share to those individuals?
Absolutely. First, it's just don't overwhelm yourself. Start simple. So the first part of, you need everyone on a call to do a small action. Don't try to solve world hunger on your first hybrid meeting. Try to keep it really small and do little increments so that you get comfortable with all the elements. Because there's the part of getting comfortable with cameras, facilitating the chat, getting the collaboration space, opening the doc. There's so much going on. The people texting you and chatting you because they can't get in the meeting. Try one little thing at a time. And I think that can really help you. And again, go back to what do you really need to meet? Why do you need all the people together? And then I'm a big fan is see if you can offer to help someone else out. I'd love if someone could watch the chat or just get people into the mural board. Just help me with that. And then I'll run the meeting, but they can see what I do to facilitate. They can see the activities. So seek out opportunities to actually attend other people's meetings. I know it's a weird concept, but you pick up so much more that you can do virtual mentoring and coaching. Absolutely. Versus just, can I come to your meeting and see how it works? Do it online as well. Ask that. And start small. Do the little pieces first. Don't try to do really big ones with 100 people. Start small. That way you build your skills. Because the biggest thing that I think can help is to try. Do some things in a safe space. Try things with a safe group of stakeholders, and build your way up. Because the more that experience sells you. That sells your value you add. So the more you can put under your belt, start doing that, but start small. Don't worry about trying to do everything right away. And then make sure you always stay focused on your goal. Why are you meeting? What do you hope to achieve? What is your role as the BA? Don't lose that no matter where you go. And, keep it, know that there's humans on the other side of that connection. They get it, they understand it, and, don't be afraid to share your own little bit of humanity too.
Absolutely. Claire.
I think for me, it's almost the same advice I would have given people who were starting before COVID, when it was, the norm was to go into the office and actually see people in person. I think for me, it's see and be seen. So, what forums can you join where you can get visibility across the business and not just in the silo that you're working? Where can you be seen in other groups? Can you attend, as Jamie said, can you attend other working groups or other project groups? Try and get to know as many people as possible, and get your face out there as well. We have some great employee resource groups, which we organise internally, and they're usually groups of specific interest. So there's one, for example, called Women of Optimizely, or WOO, and I can meet women from across the whole business. I don't necessarily work with any of them, but it gets my face out there. They know who I am and I know who they are. So if we need to come across each other at some point in the future, we already have that connection. So being visible, I think, is just as important, if not more important now than it was when you were actually physically in the office.
Yeah, and I think that point, Claire, as well, it's a very unselfish point as well, because actually you being visible means that you're making yourself available to others that need the support and might otherwise be isolated as well. So yeah, I really like that point.
Really difficult, I think, in the office. You used to just, as I said before, there was this osmosis that happened, and you didn't necessarily work with, John on production, but you knew who John on production was. And so when you came to a point where you needed someone on production, you went, oh, John. Whereas now, if you don't have any reason to get in touch with anyone in production, you wouldn't know who that person is that you can reach out to. So it's making those connections as well.
Absolutely. Ainul, any advice from you?
It's just making me think what you said, with all various teams. Having been in the firm for long, everybody asks you, who do I talk to? It's like, who do I talk to about this and who do I talk to about that? Any advice to new starters, especially remotely, is to just do a bit of reading. As you start any role, there are opportunities and there are time that you have. Don't waste that time. Ask the advice of where should you go. The first thing I do is, in any firm historically, especially when I was contracting, is find their business change methodology on the internet somewhere. Dive in and start looking for the business change methodologies, find out the documentations, the standard of their documentation, and then see how it may be completed in different projects. You'll find people will give you access to information, and then you can read your way through it to understand the lay of the land, how people work, the type of language they're using. So I would really highly recommend that if you're starting new, just do a lot of reading. Just get involved in the way everybody else has described, but just read what's out there. Majority of time, every firm has a standard approach to change. If you can learn what their approach is, you've gone more than half the battle has been won. And then they listen to you from an advice perspective rather than advising you perspective. And so, yeah, just spend a lot of time reading, find out how it happens, and make a difference.
Yeah, excellent. And that familiarity will definitely help in a vast number of ways, of course. Stuart, that'd be your view.
Yeah, I think I'd say two things. The first is allow extra time in all aspects of the role. So allow extra time for you to carry out analysis, allow extra time for you to schedule meetings, expect that things are going to take that a little bit longer. Generally it does, especially when you're first starting out. You won't be used to how quickly things are progressing. If you're joining a company as a new starter as well, you won't be used to how the company operates. So allow extra time because generally it does take a little bit longer in the remote world. And by allowing extra time, if you go quicker, you can always accelerate, but you can't claw back time you've already lost. So it's much better to underestimate how long it's better to allow that extra time. The other I'd say is just, I think like we've already mentioned so much on this call, is do the hard yards of building the relationships, be proactive, make the effort to speak to people. Better to slightly over communicate than slightly under communicate, because you'll find, like I said about things taking a little bit longer, if you under communicate, things will take a little bit longer. So I think I just encourage people, especially starting out, to just be really proactive in getting to know the organization and getting to know people within the organization. I think we talked earlier about getting to know contacts in the remote world. Often the only contact you can find is the head of a department. Now, as a BA, I don't normally want to speak to a head of a department about detailed requirements, and they definitely don't want to speak to me often about detailed requirements either. So I think getting to know people, building those contacts up is really important. And it can feel difficult though as well, because I think when you're new as well, often you've got that little bit of caution for some people. Some people are more happy to be seen, as Claire put it, than others. But I think it's really important to find your own groove and your own way to get to know people and to make that impact.
I would agree. And I definitely agree about the proactivity part. I think being really proactive as much as you can be as a new joiner, reaching out to different people. I know you've all mentioned it, is really valid as well. As I think is just putting yourself out there and setting the example as well as the new joiner. There's nothing to say you can't set an example when you join around, how you work with others, expectations on how people can deal with you. So for example, when it comes to feedback, and there's sort of a point around performance made a little while ago. When it comes to people's feedback, obviously not during a group call where there's loads of people on the call, and don't call out and say, Claire, I think you could have done that deck a little bit differently or presented a little bit differently. But maybe, can we take a little bit of time afterwards, maybe, and then take some time as a one-to-one, just talk about how you perceived that session or things that you might have identified that could be improved. But also, don't forget the positives. I'm sure in almost every instance like that, there might be one or two things that can be improved that are worth pointing out that you might not necessarily get the opportunity to at the coffee machine. But also point out all the positive things as well, because that's as important to hear for people's development as is a bit of criticism from time to time. In fact, more important, I would say. So I think on that note, we're almost out of time. It feels like we've covered a number of different things. We've definitely covered the topic of remote working, hybrid working, some of the challenges, some advice to new joiners as well. So it feels like if anyone wasn't well versed in the fact that this is a positive opportunity for everybody, it's something we can enjoy. I think it's here to stay as well, which I'm personally quite pleased about. Then let's take advantage of it, and maybe there's an opportunity for people to reach outside of their organisation as we've done and speak to others and hear a little bit about the way they might do business analysis or otherwise. So I think that feels like a good point to add to finish, apart from thanking all of you for your time and your expertise. I definitely look forward to hearing from you and seeing articles and sessions at conferences or elsewhere in the BA community and more widely. So thank you again.
Thanks, John.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.